Hey there, this is Fred Posimo. I'm the host and producer of the Make Money and Have Fun show, where I'm sitting down every single week interviewing authors, speakers, coaches, consultants, entrepreneurs, investors, millionaires, billionaires, you name it. We're going live every single week, and you don't want to miss an episode. And one of the ways that I'm able to put this show on is through what I use to produce this show, which is Anchor.fm. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest and fastest way to make a podcast out there. Let me explain. First of all, Anchor is absolutely free. They don't charge you a dime for anything on Anchor. So it's absolutely free. There's also creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And Anchor also will distribute your podcast for you. Check this out. This is so cool. It's one of my favorite things about Anchor. Anchor distributes your podcast to over half a dozen different places where podcasts can be listened to. So you might be listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, whatever your podcast platform of choice is, Anchor can most likely distribute it there for you. And you can also make money from your podcast on Anchor with no minimum listenership. It's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. So if you haven't already, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Once again, that's anchor.fm, or download the app right on your phone. It's absolutely free, like we mentioned before. And if you want to start podcasting, if you have something to say, if you want to get started with your podcast, if you already have a podcast, this is the best and easiest and fastest option that I would recommend to anybody. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Make Money and Have Fun show. This has been such an amazing month. So many cool things have gone down, have happened this month. I've been interviewing authors every single day this month, and it's been so cool because each author is really coming from a different place. Some people are writing business books, some people are writing self-help books, nonfiction, fiction books. Today we're talking about a fantasy book, which is going to be really cool. So let's get into it.
My motto in life is make money and have fun. I'm on a mission to show everyone how to make money, and have fun. I'm all about making money and having fun.
You know what that music means. It's time to get started. So here's the deal. I always bring people on here, and I never know if the people are going to be camera shy, if they're going to run away, they're going to say that they're going to be here, and then they're not actually here. So, it's always a toss-up with my different guests that I bring on. But today I'm super excited to be bringing on my good friend, Christopher Russo. What's up, Chris?
Hey, Fred. Thanks for having me. And I'm not camera shy, and I'm going to ramble and talk your ear off because I just keep going. It keeps spilling out.
I like you. I like people just like that. So that's awesome, man. Dude, what's going on? Tell us about yourself.
Not much. My name's Christopher Russell. I am the author. You can actually see the poster board here, but also the awesome paperbacks from Morgan James Publishing of Divinity's Twilight Rebirth. This is my first fantasy novel in the Divinity's Twilight series, and it is a series that deals with forgotten gods, long lost promises, heroes and villains on both sides, great wars, great social upheavals, revolutions. There's a lot of stuff going on in this series. It was originally intended to be a trilogy, but my plotting has since expanded to be a 10-book series. It is going to be epic. I hope that it's going to go really far, that maybe there'll even be an adaptation of it, because there's a lot of good stuff to unpackage in this series. And my background for this comes from, I was originally mechanical and aerospace engineering, and everybody's going, what? Why is some little stick in the mud that's supposed to be in a back room crunching numbers on a calculator writing fantasy novels? Well, I grew up loving fantasy. The first ones I cut my teeth on were the Redwall series by Brian Jacques. That's a bunch of anthropomorphic animals, and they go on these great adventures and quests as they fight off evil vermin like stoats and rats and ferrets and other what are considered unclean creatures. And that was tons of fun. I went to Lord of the Rings. I did Star Wars. Now, Star Wars is where I started to bridge the gap from fantasy to sci-fi, which is what Divinity's Twilight is. There are airships and a bunch of cool technology in this world. And Star Wars gave that to me. I was like, wow, they have these incredible spaceships. They have droid technology and clone technology and all this fun stuff. And I thought to myself, well, that's originally how I got into being an engineer. And then I backtracked that I had the creative side. I went and got the technical expertise. And then when I got out of my undergrad, I thought to myself, well, you've always wanted to write a book and you've read all these cool fantasy series. Why don't we make a book that bridges the gap between science and magic and write a cool epic with lots of characters, lots of cool morals and themes and things that kids and adults are really going to sink their teeth into. I'd say this is more of an adult fantasy, but the protagonists are 20-something. So there's a lot for young adults and teens with the way that they overcome their problems. They deal with their flaws, their limitations, lots of depression and cowardice and other things that everyone deals with.
That's amazing. I thought this was so cool. I remember when we did the little intro before the start of the month, I thought that this was such a cool book. I wrote 2 books. So my first book was just a self-help book, right? Simple, basic kind of book. But my second book was actually a collection of blog posts that I wrote. Mm-hmm. And at one point, I dipped my toe in the water of writing fiction. And I was like, I think I want to create my own mythology. I've been a big geek of Greek mythology pretty much my whole life. I geek out over that. It's super fun. It's super cool. And I'm like, you know what? Let me try something. And it just sunk. I was like, gave up on the idea super quick. But to see that you actually put together this feature length novel in a sense with a very story driven arc to it, as well as this kind of fantasy, sci-fi, and mythology vibe to it, is really, really cool. What was that process like? Getting that all from your head into an actual book.
Well, first off, I'd say go back and pick up the fiction book that you're working on, because the only person that can write that great fiction book is you. That you're the only one with those ideas, the only one that can bring that to fruition, because nobody is going to write the exact same story that you're going to write. Of course, you already know that being an author. But my mythology, so there is a creator. So I take elements of Christianity and I would say Hinduism in a way, as well as the Greek pantheon. So there's a little bit of that. There is one supreme creator that came into existence, made everything, but he was having trouble managing things. So he split himself into 7 different entities, which is where you get the Hinduism aspect. One supreme god that is composed of different parts. Split himself into 7 different pieces in order to better manage each of the 7 races in existence. However, that sort of failed because he's in a constant struggle with his antithesis, the void, the anti of creation that wants to return everything to nothingness. And so the void's way to go about this is to prove to the creator that existence is meaningless, that his creations are inherently evil, that they will constantly try to destroy each other, that they are going to bring an end to everything he loves and cares about. So there is a deific struggle, a divine struggle going on behind Divinity's Twilight, even while the characters are dealing with their mundane daily affairs, a war between the 3 Terran nations, which are essentially humans in this world. There's 6 other races who have their own problems. The Sylph and the Hues, Sylph, very powerful magic users, red-skinned. Hues are extremely good with technology, very curious, very wise. And they have been feuding with the Sylph over a major deposit of Illyrium. So that brings in your resources disputes and parts of economics and things like that for centuries. So there's a lot going on in this world, in addition to the deific struggle.
Wow. I can see how this turns into a 10-series book. I'm even thinking almost like a video game, like class-based kind of idea behind it. There's so much to this. It's such an interesting, just kind of, I guess, world or lexicon that you kind of created in there. What kind of was the spark behind this book where you were like, you know what, I got this idea, this story, I want to write it, I want to make it. Was there any particular moment that stands out to you that kind of caused that?
Well, I'd always wanted to write a book, and
Mhm.
I started my first attempt at writing fiction was for my high school honors project, and I actually sidelined that. But what it was a historical fiction called First Legion, and the idea was, what if Julius Caesar wasn't assassinated? What if he found out about the plot? He had Brutus and the rest of the senators put to death, cleared the Senate, brought in a new bunch of people, and essentially set himself up as de facto emperor early. So I gave the Brutii faction, which is Brutus's family, more power than they actually had. Put them in control of Greece, part of Turkey, the extents of the Roman Empire at that time. Well, they secede from the Roman Empire, and Marcus Aurelius, the head character who's named after an emperor that would come later on, is sent out to as part of the subjugation force to bring that part of the empire back into the fold. And so did historical fiction, got about 150 pages into that. It was going great. Teachers liked it, worked for the honors project, but there was something missing. And what was missing was that I was able to create the characters. I was able to create the plot, the idea, the what if scenario of Julius Caesar surviving his assassination. But everything else about the world, I had to maintain what already existed, what was strictly available to me. So the weapons, the armor, the policies, the customs, the dress, the religion, everything. So I was of what is realistic, what is in the real world, because it's historical fiction. You're going to drive away your audience if you don't. So I went, well, I want to write fantasy then. I want to write fantasy sci-fi and take all of the stuff in the real world and recombine it and remerge it the way that I want to do it. And that went on the back burner for a number of years. I went off to college, did my undergrad in mechanical and aerospace engineering, and I still wanted to write during that time. But when you come back at 7 or 8 o'clock at night after you've gone to class, done your homework on grounds, maybe done some exercise or whatever, and you're just burnt out and tired and want to go to sleep, well, you might just watch a video or play a game or something for that hour before bed. You don't want to do something that's a little work like writing. Writing requires a habit. It's a lot of fun, but you have to make sure that you have a schedule. You have to make sure that you're going to get down and do the work, because at the end of the day, like your motto says, make money, have fun. You're trying to make money with it, that you are, this is a product that you want to be good, that you want to put out there so that people will enjoy it. So there is a work aspect. It is a job.
Sure.
It is one of the best jobs you can possibly have, but it is still a job. So put it on the back burner. And then eventually I read a series called Shadows of the App by Adrian Tchaikovsky. He is a lesser known author for Tor. He is based out of Britain. He teaches writing courses at one of the universities over there. I'm not going to attempt to guess which one because I'll get it wrong. But amazing series. And what he does is he moves magic to the back burner. In a world where people have abilities based on their insect ancestors. And you have the apt and the inapt in this world. The apt are great with technology, and the inapt could touch a doorknob and not be able to open a door because their mind simply can't comprehend it. And the apt eventually rise up and overthrow the magic-wielding inapt, and that's where the series begins. With a technological revolution. You have the crossbow coming into being. You have a pike and shot. You have a bunch of the stuff of the Renaissance coming about and moving into the industrial era. And I thought, wow, this is really cool how each of these technological advancements not only change society, but change warfare, that they change how nations perceive that whether or not they have an advantage over their neighbors. And I said, I want to do something like that. And I sat down during a thermodynamics lecture. This is my second year of college, and I drew a map, the original map for Divinity's Twilight, which has since been reproduced by the fantastic Terry Johnson in the book itself. So these are my original Tolkien-esque maps for Southern Lazaria, which is the continent/world on which Divinity's Twilight takes place. And I'm struggling with my camera here to get this into view. But as you can see, there's a bunch of different nations, a bunch of different geographical features, really cool cities like Sarkonia up here at the very top, the biggest city in the world. There's fortresses, there's monsters, there's storm fronts, there's a bunch of different cool features. And that was sort of combining my background in history and geography, that there need to be geopolitical boundaries and rivers and different natural resources that enabled these nations to arise before you could ever start having a plot. And I continued on with that. I wrote for about 2 months. I got 2 or 3 chapters done. Everything was going great. And then I hit a wall. And I thought to myself, again, this is work, that I'm doing lots of engineering stuff. I've been staying up really late because I would write from like 9 to midnight. And then I'd be waking up at 6 the next day.
Nice.
And going back to class. And I was thinking, I'm not getting any sleep. I'm losing efficiency. Let's put this on hold. And that's the big thing about writing. You can't put it on hold because, again, writing is a good habit. It takes 80, 90 days to make a good habit. So and it takes 30 days to break it. It's much less time to break a habit. And so you get out of it. You lose that flow. You lose that efficiency, and everything just grinds to a halt.
Yep.
And so it took, because I finished Divinity's Twilight about 4 years ago and have been working on its sequels. The next one is finished and with beta readers, and I've been working on a standalone book that's going to take place in the same universe. And I've also participated in a big author anthology called From the Shadows. You can actually download it for free from Amazon or get this wonderful, huge bludgeoning device of a paperback from them as well. But these are all 10,000-word short stories from the villain's perspective. And so the one that I wrote in there, Gravitas, has been getting really good reception. And I think that people will enjoy it. It's sort of an anti-hero. But again, getting off topic, back to Divinity's Twilight. So I took about 6 or 7 years off. And then I read a book called, Resisting Happiness by Matthew Kelly. And the idea behind resisting happiness is that your refusal to say yes at any given point in your life for any decision is going to basically take away from your joy, that you are going to miss opportunities that you otherwise would have. And I read the first chapter. I had a come to Jesus moment, and I decided I'm going to write this book. And I went and wrote like 10 to 12 single-spaced Word document pages that night. And I finished chapter 3 or something like that. And within a few more months, Divinity's Twilight Rebirth, which is a 180,000-word book, was finished. And the next book is poised to be even longer. These are epic tomes because there are 8 main characters that are in the main group of military cadets that go on this adventure that are torn from their homes and thrust into conflict. I take the antagonist point of view and I make them relatable as well. You get to know them. You get to know the people on their side that are just gray, that are doing a job, that they're trying to put bread on the table for their families, that they have their own hopes and dreams and aspirations. And even the rulers, even the main villains have reasons for their actions. I think that it's important that your villain is as fleshed out as your heroes are. And of course, there are going to be twists along the way about who's related to who, what the villain's backstory is, what the hero's backstories are, why all these nations have problems with each other, who's right, who's wrong, is there someone who's right or wrong, etc.
This is so cool. Mm-hmm. I could listen to you talk about this all day. Again, it seems like the interesting thing for me is my books in terms of writing them have gone through different iterations. So like my first book is not 180,000 words, not anywhere remotely close to that. It's this little guy, but the idea behind this book was 2 things. One, I wrote everything myself. It was this idea of there's all these self-help books out there that have so much fluff in them, mm-hmm. right? All these, like, they're just telling stories, they're rambling on. And I wanted to give people just exactly what it was that they needed to take from this book and to kind of grow with and expand themselves with. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's kind of written that way. My second book is literally just blog posts that I wrote, which, like you talked about, the habit of writing, which is kind mm-hmm. of what I'm leading into. But the third book I actually wrote with a ghostwriter. So it's all kind of different perspectives. So I like to talk to, for the people who are watching, I like to talk to the aspiring author, the person who's in that place where they want to write a book, but they never have and they don't know how. What kind of advice would you give to that person? What would you say to kind of encourage them to write, to help them out with the writing process? What would your advice be?
Well, there's a couple different approaches for this. You can take the, like they say with breaking a bad habit, you can go cold turkey. Well, the cold turkey version for getting into writing is to do something like Nanowrimo, which is National Novel Writing Month. Normally that is in November. They could also be at other points in the year. But the reason that they do it in November is because Nanowrimo, so the N-O is the N-O from November. But you sit down, you figure out what you want to write about, and then you don't worry about structure or plot. Your goal is just to put words on the page for a month and to worry about parsing through and making it something coherent later. And the goal for NaNoWriMo is normally 50,000 words in a month, which is what people say is the threshold that you should be reaching if you want to be a professional author. If literally all you do is you go to work, you write, and then you do publicity and marketing for yourself, which is a whole different can of worms.
Right.
But so that is the cold turkey method. The easier method, I would say, is start and see if you can put 500 words on a page per day. So assume that there's an average of 30 days in a month. You put 500 words on the page. So that is, you are producing, I'm going to get this wrong, 15,000 words a month. So if you put down 15,000 words a month, multiply that by 10 months, so you get to 150,000, then add another 30,000. You are at a Divinity's Twilight 180,000 word book in 1 year at 500 pages a day. So I am a slow author. I average about 700 to 800 words an hour. So if I'm writing consistently going through, because I do research, I will stop and think about things. I break a lot of habits that authors say that you should have, that they say you shouldn't bother yourself when you're writing. Well, I try to make sure that my first draft is as correct as possible, that all the nitty-gritty stuff about the research, about characterization, about mental health, about combat, about weapons, about tactics, society, etc., all that research is correct on the first pass. And then that makes my editing easier, but that's me. Now, my suggestion is just get 500 words down a day. And then it doesn't matter whether they're good, they're bad, whether your sentence structure is right. That can all be parsed through later. The point is forming that habit, 500 words a day. And then if you're like me, even with doing that research, you can do that 500 words in under an hour. You could probably do it in 45 minutes. So if you have a 45-minute lunch break, you can do your 500 words. If you have 45 minutes away from the kids once they're put to bed, you can do that 500 words. Because you don't just have to think about me being a college student when I started writing. I was just taking care of myself. A lot of people have other responsibilities. They have jobs, they have kids, they have communities, they have a lot of people that they are beholden to. And so you have to just figure out when your moments are. And even that 45 minutes could be split up among parts of the day. Remember, the goal is 500 words. It's not that the 500 words are gold silk spilling from the mouth of Tolkien.
I like that. That really it makes it into a realistic goal, I think, at that point. The other thing that I want to emphasize and kind of look at is the difference between writing like a fantasy novel like yourself versus kind of more of like a straight book, if you will. So for instance, I assume that you probably needed like illustrators and you know, different kind of team members to kind of come in and help you put this together. Was there like anything extra to help like design the cover or the map and things like that?
Well, the team, including myself, was about 3 people, 3 or 4 people. Because there was myself, There was the cover artist, Chris McGrath. He teaches art up in New York. Great artist, actually really famous in fantasy circles. He did Jim Butcher's Dresden Files, which is a 20-book long-running series. It's very similar to Supernatural, if you've ever seen that on TV. But people love his work. He also works for Brandon Sanderson, who after George R. R. Martin is probably the most prolific, best-known fantasy author out there. So Chris McGrath is a big name in covers. I was very delighted, overjoyed that he did my cover, that it's brought me a lot of great press, and people love the return to like the 90s aesthetic where you have your main characters sitting in front of the fantasy backdrop. In this case, you have the desolate plains in front of Aldona Fortress, which features prominently in the novel. It's where the climax of the novel happens. But moving on from that, so Chris McGrath, cover art. Terry Johnson did the interior maps. I have my original maps here somewhere, But suffice to say that they were doodles, that they looked okay. They worked for my purposes, that I am not an artist. I don't claim to be an artist. I probably should have spent more time doing it because art informs art. Art influences art. That I draw a lot of inspiration from seeing images, from hearing music. That helps me write. And I've heard from artists and from people that create music that words influence what they do. So there's give and take. Our art flows. But then the third member was my editor, Angie Kissling. She works with Morgan James Publishing, contracts out. And so she went through and did final checks, making sure punctuation is correct, making sure dialogue tags are correct, all that little nitty gritty stuff that you do at the end. That's what we call either a line or a copy edit. A line is typically more involved because you're looking at the flow. Copy edit is just making sure that the syntax is appropriate. But so I didn't have many people aside from that everything else is either my engineering background, the knowledge that I gained from my professors and working in the field, or it's stuff that I researched online, or that I've just been a student of history from forever. Like you said, Greco-Roman period is my favorite. So porting in a lot of that, especially with regards to the architecture. The Zirconian Empire is very much what if we combined the German Reich of World War I with the Roman Empire, and they serve as more of the antagonistic force, even if they have. I don't want to call them evil because no one in any work that I write is supposed to be outright evil. It's more who is at the helm of any institution that makes it good or bad. And so the people underneath are just trying to survive, that they're trying, whether they're farmers, whether they're factory workers, there's a bunch of different stuff because the time period for Divinity's Twilight is what if we had a World War I world that had magic, several systems of magic involved in it. And these magics had caused technology to evolve in a different way than it did in our world. So they have flying battleships and trade vessels, along with televisions and radio sets at the same time that people are using gunpowder weapons and still wearing chainmail vests and things like that. Because if you have magic, if you have epic cannons and things like that that are enabled with cannons, why do you need to bring up your metallurgy or your basically your methods of fighting on the ground? That they haven't really evolved past the medieval or Renaissance era in that regard.
That's cool. It's neat how you're kind of blending the time periods with it. So in a story like this, do you ever find yourself like picking a favorite or picking a side with it, like a certain character that you like or something like that as you're going through?
Well, some authors will tell you that their favorite character is the last one that they wrote. My favorite character is Celeste, the girl pictured here. And one of the reasons I like her, this is going to be easier for me because I'm pointing up at the thing. There we go, Celeste.
Yeah, everything's backwards.
And if you want to see the image better, you can go to my website, chrisrussellauthor.com. It's right there at the front. It's also on Amazon, all the other different book sale sites. But she's my favorite because she's different from me in a lot of ways. She has a very keen intellect. She's very forthright, brusque. She pursues what she wants. She has goals and she aims to reach them. That's part of her weaknesses as well, something that she has to get over. She has to learn to rely on others, that she's had a lot of tragedy in her past, and so she doesn't really trust anyone. But so there's a lot of cool stuff with doing her segments and getting inside her head. There's also a vast difference between what she says, even if she's still being blunt and forthright, and what she thinks. So her thoughts are much more scathing than even what she says, and it's fun to write those thoughts.
Yeah, I love getting into. So a couple of years back, I became a really big fan of storytelling, and just understanding that like each story has to have an arc where there's a setup, a conflict, and a resolution, and that kind of stuff. And so I guess I took like a shift. I'm a big movie goer. I'm a big movie buff. Me and my girlfriend both are, and I kind of shifted to movies that have more of a plot as opposed to movies that don't really have much of a plot, because I liked seeing the way that stories are told and that they unfold and stuff like that. And like you're describing here with character development, it's always interesting, especially when there's a lot more going on beneath the surface than just like this kind of surface level character, which just makes it that much more fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I deal with in this series, this book, to a certain degree. I have 8 pseudo leads. Vallen and Celeste, pictured here on the cover, the male and the female, are the male and the female protagonists for the series. They are the most important, and then the third is probably Matteo, who's a very important point of view character in this first book. But there are 8 people that have to be fleshed out. And so what they start as for characters is sort of stereotypes that you have. You have Vallen. He is the egotist, that I have the power as the second Triaran. I am the chosen one, that I'm going to take on the whole world. No one can stop me. I don't need to train, yada, da, da. Celeste is the tactician. She is cunning. She is, like I said, a little bit brash, a little bit imperative, but that she tends to be calm and cool and collected unless something from her past pops up and triggers her PTSD, so to speak. You have Matteo, who is the bookworm. He has glasses. He is lanky. He has disheveled hair. He is cowardly, that he wants to be like his storybook heroes that he read about while he was working for his father's shipping company. But that he hasn't been able to reach that level because something always holds him back, that he freezes up. You have Raynar, who is the original class bully at their military academy, that he is the son of the commandant and he wields his father's power as an extension of himself. So you have all these different people that are stereotypes, and then we start to dig a little deeper. Raynar has hidden depths. He's one of my favorite characters because he was originally intended to be a throwaway. He was not supposed to go on this adventure. And yet he has one of the deepest character arcs throughout the entire series that we're going to go through, that it's just going to be a lot of fun.
That's so cool. This is really just so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's so different for me because I'm used to talking about, entrepreneurship and personal development. And this is kind of like, this is like Candyland. This is like fun for me. It's like, oh yeah, let's talk about Greek mythology and fantasy and sci-fi and magic and all this other fun stuff. So when you're not writing, what is Christopher Russell doing?
So we talked about this before. We both do martial arts. I'm a 3rd degree black belt in Taekwondo.
Cool.
I've been out of training for a little while. I've been training on my own, but not at a dojo. I went back to a dojo about 2 or 3 months ago, started teaching again. And then my family had a coronavirus scare. My grandfather actually sadly passed away from it after they thought he was improving. And then a bunch of the other, my father's brothers and sisters, thank you, I appreciate it. A bunch of my father's other brothers and sisters caught it. And so it appears that the family is more susceptible than otherwise. And so I took a break from going there for my father's sake. Since I'm currently staying at home and teaching virtually into the University of Virginia. Just coronavirus things. Everybody does what they can, does virtual, right. Does these. You were doing this podcast beforehand, but I bet that it's been even more meaningful since coronavirus that you're able to reach out and talk to people and get their stories.
Well, I started it in coronavirus. I started it in September, and it was kind of like, I'm bored. Like I was like, I got nothing to do. Why don't I start this show? And I started I just started bringing my friends on at first, and my friends are kind of interesting. Don't tell them I said that. A lot of them are entrepreneurs or investors and have cool stories to tell and things like that. And then it expanded and expanded and expanded. And then I'm like, you know what, let me do author month. And, it's just kind of grown since then. I'm like, wow, this actually worked. But like you said, for me, it's fun because I feel like every guest that I bring on here, I feel like I'm just sitting in the living room, having a chat with them. Basically, it's kind of almost the same, which, at first I was like reluctant to virtual, why don't I just fly people out? And then I'm like, wait a minute, what am I nuts? Like,
that's a lot of money. The goal is to make money and have fun, not just have fun.
Exactly. That's the thing. I mean, I love what you were saying earlier about how writing is work, but not really. That's the epitome of make money and have fun. The thing that I always tell people is I hate the cliche that goes, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. It's such utter bullcrap. Like, it doesn't even make sense. What I've done is I've changed it to do what you love and you'll work every single day of your life, but it won't feel like work anymore.
This is what I'll tell people about writing fiction.
Yeah.
You are going to have a lot of amazing days. You are going to have incredible days where words just flow, where it feels like you're floating down a river and water lilies are passing you on the side and the trees are swaying and the breeze is hitting you and it's just absolutely perfect. The sun is just right. The temperature is amazing. And then you're going to have days there it feels like you're falling into an abyss, that the darkness is closing over you, that you can't squeeze a single word from your brain. And you have to keep writing. Those are the work days. And there's going to be probably at the end an equal number of those, maybe even more of the work days, because you have to put something to page. You have to keep moving forward. It's all about progress. It's all about momentum. And that's what you're doing when we talked about forming habits. Momentum, momentum, momentum.
Exactly. Chris, this has been awesome, man. How can people get in touch with you? How can they pick up a copy of your book? I know I'm definitely getting one or probably like 5 because this book sounds amazing and I want to pick one up.
Thank you. You can go to chrisrusselldivinitystwilight.com. My name is down here. He's got the link right there. Perfect. Great. That is going to have a lot of information about the series. It's even going to have some free short stories. It's going to have links to From the Shadows, which is free online in ebook format. It's going to have a lot of cool stuff about the world. It's going to have the maps. It's going to have character art. But that's also going to be where you're going to get signed copies of the book from me. You can also get copies of the book anywhere books are sold. You'll find it in Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. You'll find it in Second and Charles, a few of them. I know that's a subsidiary of Books A Million anyway. You'll find it online. You can find it through BookBub, through Amazon, through BarnesandNoble.com. Anywhere ebooks are sold, anywhere books are sold. Again, the second book is supposed to drop fourth quarter of this year. And I'm also working on getting a standalone, which is going to be an Asian fantasy. So a cool departure from a more European, more Western fantasy in Divinity's Twilight, even if it does have Asian mythology aspects. And that's going to be dropping probably fourth quarter as well. And that's called Descendants of Dusk. It's going to have a cool magic system based on thermodynamics. I'm really excited about it. A cool post-apocalyptic feel in a world that's overrun by ice and frost. It's going to be great. But so that's what's coming up down the pipe. You know where to find me. Also Instagram, Christopher_Russell_author. Twitter is Chris_DT_author. And then Facebook, you're going to go to the Divinity's Twilight Fantasy Novels group. Sorry about that.
No worries.
This is the office. This is where the printer is. So people come in and out sometimes.
It's all good. That's the fun of doing a live show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we get all kinds of fun stuff that happens. I had one show actually cut off the other day. That was pretty hysterical.
But no, so that's everywhere to find me. It was great being on the show with you. I hope everybody checks out Divinity's Twilight, that they enjoy it, that they feed their fantasy brain, that they allow themselves to imagine, because that there's taking all the moral lessons, all the teachings, all the stuff that you talk about in your books, and this is just adding characters to them. This is taking those lessons and making them palatable to people that might not pick up a self-help book. Because everything you read is going to teach you something. And so this is a way of getting a story from it, from being able to follow people's arcs, their journeys, and being able to connect with them, to take something away from what they're doing and apply it to your own life.
Amazing. I love it. Chris, this has been so cool, man. Thanks so much for being on here. Thanks for writing such an awesome book, because this sounds like so much fun. I'm definitely going to go geek out on your website after this and find all the cool stuff I can buy. If anybody else wants to grab one of these awesome books, just head over to christopherrussellauthor.com, which is right here. It's also in the description, so I put it in the comments as well, and you can pick up his book there. Chris, what would you like to leave our guests with today? Words of wisdom, advice, encouragement, or just anything you want?
Today is the day. Pull up a Word document, pull up Scrivener, pull up whatever program you want to write with, and get those 500 words down, because we made this session a lot about teaching and giving information to an aspiring author. Today is the day that you start that journey. So don't let procrastination, don't let anything stop you. Good luck. Go get it.
Awesome. I love it. And for those of you that are still with us, we will see you again very, very soon. Have a good one, guys.
See you, Fred. Thanks.
See you.